Emily leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug while the dishwasher hummed in the background. At 35, she lived in Willow Creek, a sleepy suburb an hour outside Chicago. Think cul-de-sacs, neatly trimmed lawns, and the occasional for sale sign. Her days were a blur of routine. Getting Ethan, her 7-year-old, ready for school, tossing laundry in the washer, and texting David reminders about picking up milk. David, her husband of 10 years, was an engineer who spent half his life on the road, troubleshooting HVAC systems for corporate clients. When he was home, their talks were clipped. Logistics about Ethan's soccer practice or who'd handle the bills. Tonight, David was stuck in Minneapolis. His voice crackled through her phone on speaker. Project's delayed. Probably back Friday. Emily murmured an, "Okay?" hung up and stared at the fridge covered in Ethan's crayon drawings. She wasn't mad he was gone again. She was just tired. Tired of the same dinners for two with Ethan, the same Netflix shows, the same quiet house. The next morning, after dropping Ethan off at school, Emily scrolled through her phone and saw a Facebook post about a local art fair at the community center. It wasn't her thing. Her walls had more Target prints than gallery pieces, but she needed a break from folding laundry. She pulled on jeans and a sweater, ran a brush through her hair, and drove over, figuring it'd kill an hour. The fair was small, maybe a dozen booths with paintings and pottery. Emily wandered, sipping a free cup of watery coffee, until she stopped at a table with bold, messy abstracts. Swirls of red and orange that felt alive. A guy stood behind it, maybe late 20s, with dark hair and paint-stained fingers. "Hey, what do you think?" he asked, catching her off guard. His voice had a casual warmth, like he'd known her forever. It's cool," Emily said, fumbling. "I'm not really an art person." He grinned, leaning on the table. "You don't have to be. It's just vibes." His name was Jake, he said, a freelance artist who'd moved to Willow Creek a month ago after bouncing around the Midwest. He talked about painting like it was breathing, and she found herself listening, nodding, even laughing a little. When she said she had to go, he scribbled his number on a napkin. "If you're ever bored, I'm around." Back home, Emily tossed the napkin in her purse and forgot about it, until later, when Ethan was asleep and the house felt too still. She fished it out, hesitated, then texted, "Hey, it's Emily from the art fair. Nice meeting you." His reply came fast. "You too. Glad you made it home." It was nothing big, just a ping on her phone, but it woke something up in her, a flicker she hadn't felt in years. The next day, she didn't plan to see him. She was supposed to hit the grocery store, maybe call her sister. But after lunch, she texted Jake, "What's your studio like?" He sent an address, a rented space above a hardware store downtown. "Come check it out," he said. She told herself it was no different from grabbing coffee with a friend. Jake's studio was a mess. Canvases stacked against walls, paint cans everywhere, a folding chair in the corner. He offered her a Coke from a mini fridge, and they talked about his gigs painting murals in dive bars, her old college job at a bookstore, and eventually how she felt stuck sometimes. "David's great, but he's gone a lot," she admitted, surprising herself. Jake didn't pry, just nodded. "Sounds rough." She stayed longer than she meant to, losing track of time until her phone buzzed. Ethan's school pickup was in 20 minutes. "Gotta run," she said, grabbing her keys. Jake waved. "See you around, Emily." Driving home, she felt lighter, like she'd shaken off a layer of dust. That night, David texted, "Home tomorrow." She replied with a thumbs up, but her thoughts drifted to Jake. The way he listened, the way he didn't judge. When her phone pinged again, it wasn't David. "Had fun today," Jake wrote. "You're welcome back anytime." She stared at the screen, thumb hovering. This was harmless, right? Just a new friend. "Maybe I will," she typed, hitting send before she could overthink it. Lying in bed, Emily replayed the day. It wasn't some grand adventure, just a couple hours with a guy who didn't know her as Ethan's mom or David's wife. But it felt good, like cracking a window after too long indoors. She didn't know where it'd lead, and for once she didn't care. The breeze had slipped in, and she let it linger. After that first studio visit, Emily couldn't quite shake Jake from her head. It wasn't some big, dramatic thing, just a nagging itch to text him again. Over the next week, she found herself typing quick messages. "How's the painting going?" Or, "Cold out today, huh?" He'd reply fast, usually with a photo of a half-finished canvas or a dumb joke about the weather. It was easy, low stakes, like chatting with an old high school buddy. But every ping on her phone brought a little jolt she hadn't felt in forever. David got home Friday night, lugging his duffel bag and a stack of takeout menus. "Long week," he grunted, collapsing on the couch. Emily nodded, reheating leftovers while Ethan rattled off stories about a school kickball game. Dinner was quiet. David scrolling his phone, her stirring mac and cheese. Nothing unusual. But when he asked, "You do anything fun while I was gone?" She froze for a second. "Just the usual," she said, too quick. "Dropped by an art fair." He shrugged, not pressing, and she let out a breath she didn't know she'd held. Saturday, with David home mowing the lawn and Ethan at a play date, Emily texted Jake, "You around?" He was, so she drove over, claiming she needed to hit the post office. The studio smelled like paint thinner and coffee, and Jake was in ripped jeans, brushing blue streaks onto a canvas. "Hey, stranger," he said, smirking. They talked about his latest gig painting a mural for a vape shop, her boring week of parent-teacher emails. Then he handed her a brush. "Try it," he said. She laughed, nervous, but dabbed some red on the canvas. It was messy, amateur, but he grinned like she'd done something brilliant. They started meeting up more. Nothing planned, just, if you're free, texts. A coffee run at the Dunkin' Donuts off Route 12, a quick chat in his studio while Ethan was at soccer. She'd tell David she was grabbing groceries or running errands, and he never questioned it. Jake didn't push either. He'd tease her about her terrible painting skills or tell stories about crashing on friends' couches in Detroit, but he kept it light. Still, there was a pull, a hum under every laugh or glance that made her stomach flip. One Tuesday, David was out of town again, and Ethan had a sleepover. Emily ended up at Jake's studio after dinner. No excuse this time, just a text. "Mind if I stop by?" He had a cheap IPA cracked open, offered her one. They sat on a sagging couch he'd dragged in from the curb, talking over the hum of a space heater. "You ever think about doing something else?" he asked, leaning back. "Like what?" she said, sipping the beer. "I don't know. Something for you, not just the kid or the husband." She stared at the can, the question hitting harder than she expected. "I used to want to write," she admitted. "Kids' books, maybe. Never got past a few pages." He nodded, no judgment. "Still could." That night the air shifted. They were laughing about some dumb reality show when their knees brushed and neither pulled away. He looked at her, really looked, and she didn't look down. Then his hand was on her arm, light, testing. She didn't stop him. The kiss wasn't fireworks or movie magic, just warm, a little clumsy, tasting like IPA and nerves. When they pulled back, he grinned. "Been wanting to do that," she smiled, shaky. "Me too." After that, it was like a switch flipped. They didn't talk about it, no big declarations, just kept meeting. Coffee turned into longer hangs at his place, kisses turning into hands under shirts on that ratty couch. She'd drive home after, fixing her hair in the rear view, telling herself it was fine. David was gone half the time anyway, and Ethan was too young to notice Mom acting weird. She didn't feel guilty, not really, just alive, like she'd been half asleep for a decade. David, though, wasn't blind. He'd been home a week straight, rare for him, and picked up on stuff. She was distracted, checking her phone more, humming while doing dishes. One night he saw Jake pop up on her screen while she was in the shower. He didn't touch the phone. Didn't need to. "Who's Jake again?" he asked later, casual over a bowl of cereal. "Oh, just a guy I met at that art thing," she said, stirring her coffee. "Helps pass the time." David chewed, said nothing, but his jaw tightened. A few days later, he was downtown picking up a package from UPS and saw Jake unloading paint cans from a beat-up van near the hardware store. On a hunch, he parked across the street, watched Jake head upstairs. David waited, then followed, peering through the studio window. He saw it, a sketch on an easel, rough but unmistakable. Emily's face, smiling in a way she hadn't with him in years. His stomach dropped. He didn't storm in or call her out. He drove home, hands gripping the wheel, mind racing. This wasn't just some friend, Something was up, and he wasn't about to let it go. Emily didn't know he'd seen. She was too caught up texting Jake about meeting tomorrow, feeling that slow burn inside her grow. She thought she had it under control, thought it was still her little secret, but the flame was smoldering now, and it wouldn't stay quiet much longer. By now, Emily's life had split into two lanes. One she drove with David and Ethan, the other with Jake. The Jake lane was narrower, bumpier, but it was where she felt the wind in her hair. They'd been sneaking around for a couple months. Coffee stops stretched into hour-long talks. Studio visits turned into makeout sessions on that lumpy couch. She'd come home after, splash water on her face, and slide into bed next to David like nothing was different. He'd be half asleep or scrolling emails, oblivious. At least that's what she told herself. But Jake was starting to push. One afternoon, they were sprawled on his floor, sharing a bag of chips after messing around. He propped up on an elbow, crumbs on his shirt, and said, "You ever think about leaving him?" Emily blinked, caught off guard. "What, David?" she said, sitting up. "Yeah," Jake shrugged, like it was no big deal. "You're not happy. I see it." She laughed it off. "That's crazy." But his face stayed serious. "I'm not kidding, Em. We could figure it out. You and me." The words stuck with her, heavy like wet clothes. She liked Jake, liked the way he made her feel. But leaving David, uprooting Ethan's life, that wasn't some daydream she could play with. She started pulling back after that, skipping a meetup here, taking longer to text back there. "Busy with Ethan," she'd say, and he'd reply, "Sure, cool." But she could tell he wasn't buying it. Then he showed up unannounced, once at the grocery store, accidentally bumping into her in the cereal aisle, and once outside Ethan's school, leaning on his van like it was normal. "Just passing by," he said, but his grin felt forced. She brushed it off with a tight smile, heart pounding, and hustled Ethan into the car. David, meanwhile, was piecing things together. That sketch he'd seen through Jake's window gnawed at him. He wasn't the jealous type, never had been, but this wasn't just a hunch. Emily was different, jumpy when her phone buzzed, vague about her day. One night he tested it. "You still hanging out with that art guy?" he asked, flipping through a Home Depot flyer at the kitchen table. She was wiping down the counter, didn't look up. "Jake?" "Yeah, sometimes. He's just a friend." David nodded slow, letting it drop, but he didn't believe her anymore. He started paying attention. She'd say she was running to Target, but come back with no bags. She'd step outside to take a call from her sister, but he'd hear her voice soften in a way it didn't for family. He didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he Googled Jake, found his Instagram. Artsy shots of paintings, a few bar selfies, nothing obvious. But then he saw a post, Jake in his studio, caption, "Late nights with good company," time-stamped last Tuesday when Emily said she was at book club. David's gut twisted. He didn't need more proof. He just needed a plan. Emily felt the walls closing in. Jake kept texting, "Miss you. When's next time?" And it wasn't fun anymore. It was clingy. At home, David was quieter, watching her more. She caught him staring once while she scrolled her phone, and her "what" came out sharper than she meant. "Nothing," he said, turning back to his laptop. She couldn't tell if he knew, but the not knowing was worse. Guilt started creeping in too. Not the big, sobbing kind, but a low hum every time Ethan hugged her or David fixed her coffee without asking. She decided to end it with Jake. One Thursday, David was in Cleveland for work, and Ethan was at her mom's. She drove to Jake's, hands sweaty on the wheel. He opened the door in a paint-smeared t-shirt, grinning. "Hey, stranger." She didn't smile back. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Okay, shoot." She took a breath. Us, it's gotta stop. I can't keep doing this." His face hardened. "What, you're just done? After everything?" "It's not like that," she said, voice shaky. "I've got a kid, a life. I can't just blow it up." Jake stepped closer, too close. "You're scared, that's all. You don't have to stay stuck with him." She shook her head, backing up. "No, Jake, I mean it. We're done." He stared at her, jaw tight, then turned away. "Fine, your call." She left, legs wobbly, and sat in her car for 10 minutes before driving home, relief mixing with a weird ache. David got back the next day earlier than expected. He walked in while she was folding laundry, dropped his keys on the counter. "Good trip?" she asked, forcing normal. "Yeah," he said, then paused. "Saw something funny downtown yesterday. That art guy's van parked near the library. Thought you said he was just a friend." Her stomach dropped, but she kept folding. "He is. Probably had a gig or something." David looked at her, eyes steady. "Right. Probably." That night, he didn't sleep much. Neither did she. She'd cut Jake loose, but the air in the house felt thick, like smoke she couldn't see through. David wasn't yelling or packing bags. He was just there, watching, waiting. She didn't know what he'd do next, and that scared her more than anything Jake ever said. The ashes were piling up, and something was about to spark. The next few days after Emily ended things with Jake felt like walking on eggshells. She kept busy, scrubbing the kitchen, helping Ethan with a science project about volcanoes, anything to dodge the quiet. David was home more, a rare stretch with no trips, and that made it worse. He didn't bring up Jake again, but his silences were loud. He'd sit at the table with his coffee, scrolling his phone, glancing at her like he was waiting for her to crack. She didn't know how much he knew, and she wasn't about to ask. Jake didn't take the breakup well. He texted her that weekend. "Can we just talk?" 5 minutes. She ignored it. Then Monday, a longer one. "I get it's over, but I deserve a real goodbye." She stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then deleted it. Tuesday, he called, twice. She let it go to voicemail, his voice muffled through the speaker. "Em, come on, don't do this." She blocked his number after that, hands shaking, telling herself it was done. But Willow Creek was small, and running into him was inevitable. It happened Thursday, a gray, drizzly day. She was at the CVS picking up cough syrup for Ethan when Jake walked in, hoodie damp, eyes locking on her in the aisle. "Hey," he said, voice low. She gripped the bottle, heart thudding. "Jake, I told you." He cut her off, stepping closer. "I just want to understand. Was it all nothing to you?" People shuffled past, pretending not to notice. "It wasn't nothing," she said, quiet but firm. "But it's over. Please." He stared, jaw tight, then nodded once and walked out. She paid and left, rain streaking her windshield all the way home. David was waiting when she got back. He was in the living room, TV on low, Ethan upstairs doing homework. "You're wet," he said, not looking up. "Yeah, stopped at CVS," she replied, hanging her coat. He clicked the remote off, turned to her. "Saw Jake's van there when I drove by earlier. Funny coincidence." Her mouth went dry. "He was just there. I didn't plan it." David stood, hands in his pockets. "Right, like all those other times." The air shifted, heavy and still. She'd been dodging this, but here it was. "What do you mean?" she asked, voice thin. He stepped closer, eyes steady. "I'm not stupid, Emily. The art fair friend who's always around? The late nights you're at book club? I saw that sketch in his studio weeks ago. You gonna tell me it's nothing?" Her stomach sank. She opened her mouth, closed it. "It's not what you think," she managed. "Then what is it?" His tone wasn't loud, just sharp, cutting through the excuses she'd rehearsed in her head. She looked down, rain dripping from her hair onto the carpet. "It was a mistake. A dumb, selfish mistake. It's over now." He didn't move, didn't blink. "How long?" She swallowed. "A couple months, but I ended it. Last week." He let out a slow breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Great, so I'm the last to know." They stood there, the rain tapping the windows, Ethan's footsteps creaking upstairs. "I'm sorry," she said, barely audible. David ran a hand through his hair, paced a step, then stopped. "I don't even know what to say to you right now. 10 years, Em. And you pull this?" She nodded, tears prickling, but he wasn't yelling. He was too calm, and that scared her more. "What happens now?" she asked. He shrugged. "I don't know. I need to think." He grabbed his keys, headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she called, panic creeping in. "Out," he said, pulling on his jacket. "Don't wait up." The door shut behind him, and she sank onto the couch, rain drumming louder outside. Ethan poked his head down the stairs. "Mom, is Dad mad?" She forced a smile. No, buddy, just tired. Go finish your homework. David drove to a bar a few miles out, one he hadn't been to in years. He sat at the counter, nursing a beer, staring at the TV playing a Bulls game he didn't care about. He didn't know what he felt. Anger, sure, but also this hollow ache. He'd suspected for weeks, but hearing it from her made it real. He didn't want a divorce, not yet, not with Ethan in the picture. But he didn't know how to look at her the same either. Emily stayed up, folding laundry she'd already folded, checking her phone for a text that didn't come. Around midnight, headlights swept the driveway. David was back. He walked in, damp and quiet, hung his coat. "We'll figure it out," he said, voice flat. "For Ethan, but I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight." She nodded, throat tight, and watched him climb the stairs. The rain slowed to a drizzle, leaving puddles in the yard. Emily stood at the kitchen window, staring out. She'd wanted something more, some spark, and she'd gotten it for a minute. Now it was gone, and all she had left was this mess. David wasn't leaving, not tonight, but he wasn't really here either. The embers had burned out, and what came next was anyone's guess.